Okay, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to my classroom. Not that you guys had much of a choice. My brief presentation is going to be on text-dependent questions. And the goal of this presentation is largely to get you guys to come away with an understanding of what text-dependent questions are and some comfortability in generating some text-dependent questions on your own that you'll be able to eventually apply to your own instruction. I want to first start with just asking you guys what kind of different texts that you use in the classroom. We have a variety of different disciplines here. So when I say text, what comes to mind for you guys in your classrooms?
It's literally like scripts and also like recorded performances.
That's a wonderful example from our drama teacher. Scripts and performances. What else comes to mind?
Fictional text, passages.
Okay, short reading passages. Yeah. In the history discipline, we use a lot of primary source documents, those pieces that are written, spoken by people that lived through an era. Textbooks or historians' interpretations are always used as well. But text is kind of a broad definition, and the skills that we're using, generating questions, can apply to a variety of different texts. So I first want to talk about what text-dependent questions are. This is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but how do we understand it? What comes to mind when we hear this term? If any of us were trying to define it.
Not an opinion or thought, but is actually rooted in whatever the source, whatever the text is.
Would it be a right there questions, like the questions are provided on the text without, you don't have to infer to get the information?
Yeah, you definitely have to refer back to the text. They can certainly be right there questions. They can be higher order inference questions too, but you're going to have to do it, try to come away with an understanding based on the text itself. So really the definition specifically asks questions that can be only answered by referring directly back to the text. And some characteristics of these types of questions: they draw the reader back to the text to discover what it's saying. They have concrete and explicit answers rooted in the text. And as Ed points out, mix of personal opinion, background knowledge, imaginative speculation, those aren't dependent in text-dependent questions. It's all coming back to what the student has read. Let's take a look at why there's a big push for text-dependent questions. Comes as no surprise, I'm sure to you guys, that Common Core has a lot to do with this. And the Common Core expects students to not only read a text, but then they have to generate their own opinions based on the text and back it up, usually with a quote or some specific piece of evidence. And text-dependent questions are drawn with the fact in mind that they're going to need to get that evidence and do it from a complex text. And then the questions can come from any of the other standards, 2 through 9. We'll take some time to look at towards the end of the presentation. What are other reasons for using text-dependent questions? Ideally, these are the types of questions that they're going to need to be able to answer when they get to college or even higher order work in the workplace. Text-dependent questions are intended to also level the playing field. So we have students, especially at our school, that come with a wide range of previous experience, whatever school that they're coming at, elementary, from this state or from this country or not. So a text-dependent question means that ideally all students have equal access to doing well on that question. It doesn't privilege any kind of special background knowledge. And then lastly, the student gets better at this, reading and understanding what they're looking at. They'll be motivated to do better on these types of questions in the future. They won't be disengaged because I can't speculate as well, or I don't have as much awareness of this specific author or particular historical event. So we're going to spend a bit of time now with you guys trying to make sense of what a text-dependent question may look like, or what a non-text-dependent question could look like. And we've all written questions of various qualities, some text-dependent, some not. And because Common Core definitely privileges these kinds of questions moving forward, we want to create some awareness for what they look like and what students might be seeing on these future assessments. So I want to give you guys a few minutes now to look at a very familiar document, and a document that Common Core mentions in its ideal exemplar documents, and that's the Gettysburg Address. So what I'd like you first to do is just take a minute and read over this handout. And then we're going to look at the first 4 questions on your handout. And what I'd like you guys to do is to just identify, is it text dependent or not? Those questions that appear on the bottom of that page. Okay, we about ready to go over these? All right, let me just ask you guys in general, do we feel like our students will be able to handle these types of questions? This is a challenging text. Somewhat? I think, at least in my own experience, the more and more we can give exposure to these types of questions regularly in our classroom, it becomes less challenging. But anytime we're dealing with primary sources, in this case a document that's 150 years old, it's especially challenging for students. Let's go over your guys' answers. Question 1 asks, what are the people who are assembled at Gettysburg there to do? Do we think this was text dependent or not?
I said yes.
You'd say yes. So let me ask you, how were you able to determine that?
Like in the 3rd paragraph, the speech kind of goes into how they're there to commemorate like the loss of the death of all the soldiers, and so I didn't have, like it is in the text, that I would get that response from what the speech is actually said for what the purpose of Lincoln and those who were there to hear the speech there to do.
So if we can identify that line or lines in the text, that bit of evidence, pretty good reason that it's going to be a text-dependent question, and that's absolutely right. We look at number 2, have you ever been to a funeral? Compare your experience to that at Gettysburg. What do you think about that one? So does anyone want to speak to why that might not fit?
You're making a connection, so it's your own experience.
Okay. Yeah, so it's asking you about your opinion, right? Now, somebody might say, what's the Gettysburg Address? They ask you about Gettysburg. Doesn't that make it text dependent?
I guess the second half could be. Did you make that connection?
Yeah, second half is getting at that connection, but I think your first point, Rosie, is very much still rooted in the fact that it's coming at personal experience. It's not asking about Lincoln, it's not asking about his words and what he was experiencing or expressing at that time.
Also, what if I've never been to a funeral and I can't
Yeah,
really answer that
answer.
question?
Also a good point. So we're talking about kind of privileging background, knowledge, experience over what the text is saying. What is the unfinished work that Lincoln asked those listening to commit themselves to at the end of the speech?
Oh, yeah, that is text dependent as well.
Yeah, and this is definitely a text-dependent question, and they kind of hint at the fact that it's at the end of the speech. Then number 4, Lincoln says that the nation is dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Why is equality an important value to promote? What do we have this one as?
Initially, I said yes because the idea that all men are created equal is exactly there, but the point of the question is not in there.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think we all have to kind of be aware of, that we can use the word Gettysburg, we can use the word Lincoln, and that's a springboard to making it personal. But this question isn't text dependent either. You're asking them to kind of think outside the box and think about equality, maybe even equality today. Well, that's something worth teaching. It's not a question that they're going to see on a park exam. It's not a question that's going to get them to understand necessarily a close reading of the Gettysburg Address. So you guys did great with that. I just want to lastly share with you guys the materials that are here. I mentioned before that text-dependent questions can be written really on any of the standards 2 through 9, and here's some question sets that you guys can use to generate some text-dependent questions for yourself within your content area. So thank you.